and it is very, very hard to get. So at one point, it was one of the best free news readers you could get because they basically paid people to get the articles. So you didn't just like Google News, just like, oh, links to somebody behind a paywall kind of stuff. But they have rebranded it. So now my icon shows up as Start. It used to just be News. And what I like is they had to put Start parentheses News, because clearly if you were like, what the hell's the stupid Start button on where my news used to be? But of course they're adding that to Windows as well. This, man, it's got some serious. It's actually not bad. You can see where that's going though, right? With Windows 10, with like a news reader. So Start button is how you start Windows, but now eventually it'll get to, your social stuff, and everything. They're back, and like you send it back when Teams is, before Teams is born, because that's the only way John Connor did it. So you got to get rid of Teams before Teams is born, right? That's the whole. So I mean, you get your Terminator. What are you going to use it on? Saving humanity or taking out some really annoying thing that just kind of bug you? And I'm going to guess 95% of humanity would just take out. Oh, I really hated these Jordans. I'm going to get rid of these Jordans.
Email has wound up being basically Outlook, whatever's the pre-installed iPhone app, and webmail for like 95% of it. And I really I wonder what the world would be like if like Mozilla and all those other Firebird and all the other alternative ones ever picked up traction back in the day. So Outlook had a little bit more competition.
Yeah, I love Eudora way back. Of course, you can actually still download a free version of Eudora. The weirdest thing was Qualcomm bought it. I think I downloaded one of the last ones. Because I have some mailboxes still saved from Eudora. But yeah, I don't know. Why did Outlook win? At one point, Outlook was superior. I mean, but it definitely had a lot of problems. But I mean, and then of course, I think the problem with Outlook now is, especially the web version, it's fighting. Google, it's finding all these other things, and then they're doing. I think fundamentally, Microsoft doesn't understand that the people who still use Outlook and still pay for Office prefer that nothing ever changes, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I hate move fast and break things for the stuff that I use every day.
Right, and but that's the future. Is if you actually want to stay I understand it. If you want to stay a viable business, you're like, if we're going to stand still and just like wait for us to sink into the tar pits, that's not a future. So I get that, but it's just really annoying because I do think most of the people who use these,
as far as being unofficial tech support goes, it's a lot easier than it used to be, since I've moved a lot of the people who would call me onto Chromebooks actually. But so these days, the vast majority of my unsupported tech support calls are actually stuff like, hey, Facebook looks different. How do I find my groups now? And stuff like that.
Right. And it's the same thing because, for those companies, they are making the moves because they're slowly boiling the frog, right? But I do wonder, like, it just makes everybody angry, and it just irritates everybody all the time to have functionality. It's like you have this right here, you look away, they come and take it away and move it somewhere else, like underneath, which is a classic Microsoft thing for like, because the UI is already like practically an Adobe interface, so you can't find anything, and then they move stuff around randomly. I'm sure their own UI experts say it's better, but for old timers that are just used to reaching for it here to move it, it just doesn't work. I don't know though. I mean, it's pretty much. Are you still working on the technical issues?
Yeah, sorry, everybody. Having some problems with for some reason our internet, our bandwidth. So keep going.
I will continue to complain. It's almost like it's like TV, right? Television.
Okay, what about it?
Well, you just want to go home. You want to watch Good Times, All in the Family, whatever. And then next thing you know, like, hey, you're out of the demo. We don't care about you. We want to like make something else that's like does not appeal to an audience. And in classic form, business is always looking for money, and they're always looking for where the money's going to come from next. So you sort of age out to a certain point and like, we don't care about you. You either need to figure out where we move that functionality in Facebook or Outlook, or why don't you go load Eudora from somewhere, download it on an FTP site. I don't know.
I heard on the Full Nerd that you could download Eudora on the internet still, so go check that out.
Yeah, no, I think Qualcomm still has it somewhere, but they don't care, and it's very similar to how the PC at one point sort of. I got to bring back to the PC somehow, but at some point, everybody was absolutely sure that everyone would use a tablet and a phone, and that the PC was dead. Right? I don't care what anybody tries to revisionist history, whatever these people were like. It's over. You're going to sit out in the grass with your tablet, right? And they were like, yeah, and it was like, it's over, and they said it so much. Even the PC company was like, it's over. Microsoft was like, it's over. We got to look for a way out. Look at these iPad sales; they're crazy, right?
Game over, man.
Game over. And then it comes around and like, no, it actually turns out no, it didn't go away. So, and you know what? Look at all these TV shows that were like true classics. They reboot them. Like the crazy thing is like these rebooted TV shows. I don't like necessarily you take the TV show, recast everything, change everything around to appeal to a new, modern, younger audience. But the ones where they take the old show, it's like, holy smokes, it's like they never stopped. Like everybody looks exact like the Will and Grace. I was watching, like my wife and daughter were watching at home. I was like, what is this? Are these new episodes? Or like, yeah, these are new episodes, but it looks exactly the same. Like nothing's changed. I mean, to me, that's the kind of reboot I like, which very much explains. Are we still going?
Yeah, we're.
That's just like Star Wars. Star Wars explains this perfectly. Look at Star Wars. All the new movie. Every time they try to make it better, people just get angrier and angrier. And then the ones that are the favorite of the fan base are the ones that are throwbacks to the original, right? Which are new stories. Like look at Mandalorian. The best movie, I would argue, was Rogue One.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, and it's mostly because it existed in the Star Wars universe that you felt there were more stories to be told. Whereas studios and business wants to move on to the next big thing we can mine but it turns out that you could actually have success doing the older thing. So
it's true.
And thus we come back to PC gaming being the hottest, biggest thing. Except for people can't
speaking
get
of the other big thing, VC Jester, thank you so much, gave us 2 $5 super chats. The first one is for crowdsourcing better internet at IDG.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to touch that.
It's actually awesome here too.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
It's normally awesome. I think it's here.
It's so good. And he also gave another $5 super chat and said, if they got you, Brad, a pointy wizard hat, would you wear that during the show?
Yes.
All right. Cool.
I'm trying to figure out the wizard hat, but okay.
Yeah. Well,
I will just answer that with an honest yes.
Perfect. Okay, then let's. Wow.
You're still going?
Sorry about the problems, people. We should be good now. Gordon, let's get going because we're a little late. So.
I'm
we'll
ready. Just kick it off.
Yep.
Sorry, I was watching a Linus Tech Tips video. Are 4 cores enough? I was gonna.
All right. Yeah, we're ready. Let's do it.
I want one of those CPU holders.
Oh,
I just use the black box.
All these people tuning in just to watch Gordon watch a Linus Tech Tips video. That's like,
actually, there are a lot of
Inception.
YouTube channels that do that. That just stream out themselves watching other YouTube channels.
Yeah, they really are pushing that's those folks. They are abusing what the courts have ruled is fair use. They are clearly abusing it, and I will tell you, in every instance before where you abuse it, eventually the court comes back and says, nah, you can't do that no more.
Well, it's fine
because of those people.
It's fine if it's on YouTube though, because then I get the notification and I have to manually go in and say, hey, do I want a share of their ad rev? Not that they got a ton of views, but
no, I'm just saying it's you can't clearly. I cannot watch a brand new release Marvel movie and react to it and then say, well, it's fair use. No, not really, but. Okay, ready?
Yes, let's do it.
You're going to try not to screw this up? Yeah, it's been one of those days. One of those days already. In this episode of The Full Nerd, DDR5 and dead 3090s.
Yeah, quick and to the point.
Welcome to the Full Nerd, episode 190. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello, Internet.
Elaine Yee is taking some class so she can get a free copy of Windows 11, so she's not here. And Ann Patrick Murray is controlling the horizontal and vertical.
Before we dive into it, I've realized it's been a couple weeks. There is some news around the PC world that we haven't discussed on this show. So yeah, Brad, I want to congratulate Brad. You have a new position. Please tell us what's going on at PC World.
Brad looks shocked.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. So yeah, I'm the executive editor now, and we're all going to kick some butt. So keep reading. Going to be some butt kicking stuff.
That means Brad is all of our bosses now. You know, we have to report to Brad now. Jeez.
I just realized the painting. Is it a Mandelbrot or something up there? Or
That is like a $20 tapestry I got on YouTube, Amazon.
oh, $20. Where are the
I have an old
tapestries?
I have an old house that has plaster walls, and I can't put nails in it. So look for light stuff that I can hang up with Velcro strips.
There you go. Well, yeah. Anyway, I want to congratulate you live on this show for the promotion, Brad. You're gonna rock as the head of PC World.
Although
You're
not-
already rocking. Already rocking.
You're not wearing a mandated red shirt, as we all are today, for some reason,
Oh,
including my red
oh, yeah.
canteen.
I'm wearing pink letters and pink shorts, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay, then let's. Anyway, just want to say it. Let's hop into the show because we got some explainers, some things that needed to be explained. The first one, DDR5, Gordon.
Yeah, I just basically, hey, it's coming. It's clearly finally here. And what are the things, the important, other, this is a different audience. There's actually a story on PCWorld.com today. You can go read, basically explaining a lot of the things you really sort of need to know about DDR5, kind of put it in my PC. And clearly, I think for this audience, more focused. But the summary is new memory. It's one more than DDR4, clearly. So it'll be one more better. You will need a new CPU. You will need a new motherboard. You will need new RAM. So it is like all RAM transitions. They are often painful. Obviously offers more density. It has internal ECC, but again, as Ian would point out, it's not really the ECC you're thinking about, but basically ECC is performed on the chips internally because they're going to get to 512 gigs of memory in a consumer desktop. So you need ECC inside in order to make that product actually viable. The rest of it,
RAM disc, baby.
I know,
RAM disc.
crazy, right? I mean, yeah. So up to 512 gigs right now. Arguably, what 128 probably 128 gigs today in a GDR4 system. More memory bandwidth in the end. In fact, interestingly, I don't think I've seen this anywhere else. But reading through some Micron briefings, they were saying, clock for clock or that they are getting 37%, 36% more bandwidth out of DDR5 than a DDR4 module. Latency is, pretty much a wash, not a huge deal. It will be more expensive. In fact, the modules that have been sold are probably about 2x of what you are getting for a DDR4 module. It'll be rare. It'll be hard to get. It'll be painful. It's also, of course, I didn't mention this in the story itself, but it is breaking up the module into two channels, which gets in a good question from Dr. Ian Ketras. Like, well, would you call this dual channel? Would you call a system with two DDR5 modules a quad channel system? And I would argue that no, it's still, for the most part, a dual channel system for most people. And, it probably depends on how you configure it in the motherboard anyway. And I think you can't really break that convention. And it's best probably they will still, I imagine, be dual channels, right? So what else is interesting about DDR5? And it'll be hotter because memory, the voltage regulator is moved from the motherboard now into the module, so it will be slightly hotter. We don't really know how much, depending on how much is being pushed to it. Corsair was saying, yeah, it's potentially probably going to be hotter. We got this special design in ours that is actually going to pay off dividends. So hotter, more expensive, hard to get. It's basically everything you've come to expect from a new memory transition. So they're never they're never fun.
Heat sinks aren't just going to be for bling anymore on RAM. It sounds like.
Yeah, it might actually do something. I do wonder, like, if because the heat sinks are really most likely Zen 4.
I was going to say Alder Lake S supports it, but they're also going to support DDR4. What do you think about that? What do you think about, should they just rip the Band-Aid off? Is it good to ease into a transition like this?
Well, you can't. Realistically, there's just no way, and there's no way you can supply the modules in enough volume and at the prices that you're going to accept in, say, a Core i5 level box.
Especially these days.
Especially these days. You could almost guarantee that every single Core i5 box will be DDR4 based because cost. I imagine the transition will be like all previous transitions. Memory transitions are painful and angry. There's a lot of screaming at first, and then eventually it settles down to, oh, actually, it's actually kind of worth it. And hopefully we'll get there faster this time. But yeah, DDR5 being, potentially 1.7, or 2x more expensive, that's just not going to wash in a consumer budget box. So all the mid-range and lower will be DDR4. Even some of the, like higher end boxes will be DDR4 to cost. But, I think you'll get Core i9 and Ryzen 9. Those machines will most likely be configured with DDR5.
Yep.
I know when we had Ian on, he did not think that there would be combo boards. He thought actually they were going to try to prevent some of that from happening. I don't know if that's necessarily good idea. I do get why you would do it, because most of the people who ever buy combo boards, they never ever bother to change the memory out to the next.
Yeah,
it's rarely worth it. It's just kind of silly. So why waste the time to add the extra traces for DDR4 and all this stuff? It may even hurt performance and capacity. Why even bother do it? Just go either do DDR5 or DDR4. So I get that. But I also understand people I like to change things. So I want an out, because DDR5 is the future. It will be the future, but I want that capability. Generally.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, because if you just upgraded in the last year or two, if your PC is supported by Windows 11, let's say, you probably already have DDR4 modules. So if you're looking to upgrade all that stuff, it makes sense to want to be able to just move your memory over. But in the past, this one seems to have creeped up really fast because DDR4 took so long. But in the past, what I've done to try to avoid all the hassles, because those early DDR memory transitions can be hassles, is I would typically just skip a generation. This is going to be the first generation of all this stuff coming out. If I could swing it, I'm going to wait till the next one, just so, PCIe 5 will be out. DDR5 will have some of the kinks worked out. The motherboards will have that extra time with it. That's just always what I've done in the past.
You mean as a whole system? You mean CPU and everything?
Yes, as a whole system. If I'm looking to upgrade, now I'd be like, can I get one more year out of this so I can get the next generation beyond it, so it's an established technology? And I found that's minimized the headaches for me in the past. Yeah,
I actually think, because my opinions have already been stated. I generally like PCIe 5 is PCIe folks. They don't screw around. It basically just works. It's you don't even know there's a change. So generally, they always have it nailed down. Memory can be a little more problematic because you have to get all the module makers up to speed, and there's some issues, but generally it goes fairly smoothly. But I think if I were building an i9 or Ryzen 9, you're not building that level of system to take a step back on something. And of course, we don't know what you're going to get out of DDR5 on the platforms, but most of the people who are buying it for PCIe 5, which most people don't need, do you really need that Ryzen 9 or a Core i9 anyway? Most of those folks, you just kind of want the best thing. You want to move the notch up to the best thing and everything. So I don't think that's necessarily bad, and it lets you brag about it to people. That's very important for a certain class of people. But yeah, for the actual practical everyday person, I think you will initially. I think Alder Lake and Zen 4 be fine with DDR4 if there is a DDR4 version of Zen 4. That is, I imagine the same thing, because they have to, because you're not going to buy a Ryzen 3 with DDR5. It just doesn't track. So.
We got some good questions in Discord if we want to swap over to those, or is there anything else from a high level you want to cover about?
Well, I think what's going to happen, let me predict this, is everybody's going to scream and shout. There's going to be the normal, pulling of hair, gnashing of teeth, hand wringing over DDR5 because look, oh my God, you're only getting X percentage more performance for twice as much money. That's going to be normal. Any new memory transition is always a pain, and I would say, yeah, that's going to happen. Go ahead, get it out of your system, but in the end, DDR5 is the path forward for everybody. So, remember that. It's just like hardware ray tracing. People want to scream and shout about it and don't want it to occur. Let's never change anything. Let's go exactly to don't introduce DDR5 until DDR5 costs exactly the same or less than DDR4. Well, that doesn't happen. That never happens.
If you're worried about it, like I was saying, wait the generation. Like if you wait one generation, costs get better, compatibility gets better, everything gets better. If you don't mind not having the latest cutting edge stuff. It's the same deal with RTX cards. That RTX 20 series, like there were not very many ray trace games with those, but now it's hopping now that the second generation is out. It's just going to be the same deal with DDR5. I'm excited to see it happening. So
yeah, no, and I also think it's like if you've got a 7th gen, KB Lake, or you've got a Ryzen 1000 part, you're moving on to 4 years old now, maybe 5 years. You can't run Windows 11. Maybe if you want to make that move, then yeah, I don't know if I could deal with waiting another year. So I would say, go for a mid-range part with DDR4 probably makes sense. And that's one of the really classic, traps everybody falls into. I've fallen into myself, because you go like, well, if I buy 32 gigs of DDR5 for, I don't know, $350, in 4 years, I can still use that RAM. Yeah, but you probably could have bought 32 gigs of DDR4 for, I don't know, $150. And then in 4 years, the price of 64 gigs of DDR5 will actually be as cheaper. So yep. It rarely ever pays for yourself. So that's definitely one thing I think is just always you end up losing, is like future-proofing yourself. It never happens. Yeah, you can use the modules, but the initial modules compared to the modules coming out in 4 years are going to be dogs. So there's a lot of arguments not to do it. But again, if you're a bleeding edge person and you want to have the very best thing, then yeah, that's fine. And don't let people tell you it's wrong on the internet, because you know what? You wanted to have the one more number than them, and you got it. So that's more power to you. You can afford it. So
nice. Well, you want to get some pointed questions? All right. Well, we have a whole load of them here from Dr. Ian Cutress.
This is like your teacher asking you
Potato and Nantech. So I'm just going to go these one by one because we got a little bit of a list. Part A. Do you think Intel's press kit will be DDR5 based only, or both DDR4 and DDR5?
I'm going to say DDR5. Intel's traditionally gone for notching it up a bunch, because I think internally they think like, you know what? People accuse us of being too conservative, not going crazy. We're going to go with DDR5. So I think initial Alder Lake will be i9 with DDR5, and then maybe a second seed kit, or later on secure yourself of an i7 or i5 with DDR4. So if there is a 10% or whatever you're going to get out of it, then I think it'll be DDR5. If they've always done that in the past, and I would say if Intel actually came out and seeded a better feel for it, but my guess is there'll be a reasonable performance increase, but not. It's never enough. Having gone through this so many times, it's never enough to offset the initial anger from everybody saying, well, this is just stupid. I'm just going to buy the older thing because it's cheaper. And that's going to happen. I can see that coming already.
If you're the kind of person who doesn't ever go in and turn on XMP or overclock your memory or whatever, then if you just buy some DDR5 and replace your stock clock DDR4 with it, I think you'll see a decent change.
Yeah, that could happen too. But the other thing is like, this would be interesting because this is right up Ian's lane, but it's just like, it's so hard to find applications that really like, oh, we really need memory bandwidth to really stretch our legs. And most of us like, you know what? Memory bandwidth just kind of sucks. So, look at the CPUs with these big fat caches. It's just sort of like it's like everything is designed to like you can run terrible RAM and not really, it won't kill you. So it feels like the benefits to really high clock or even low latencies, maybe some things, but a lot of times it's not really worth it for most people, I think, as a practical aspect.
All right. Let me get back to the professor's questions. Part B. If both, how much emphasis? Oh, whoops! I should ask this. If both, how much? If they send out both DDR5 and DDR4 and DDR5, how much emphasis are you going to put, you specifically, Gordon, on DDR4 versus DDR5 when it comes to the launch review, compared to say testing JEDEC versus fast kits?
Yeah, JEDEC. Boy, that's going to be a tough one. I think what I'll probably do is look at their internal guidance, and depending on the launch window, because we don't know how much time people are going to get with parts. If it's a short time period, you're going to concentrate on the very best thing. I don't even use JEDEC for my CPU testing these days. A lot of people do. I feel like at a minimum, people enable XMP, right? To me, that's sort of like the base level. Otherwise, why even bother? You might as well be running 2133, right? So I generally will at least enable XMP, and I think that, so sort of like, I guess the showdown you really want to know is like, so when am I going to put Rocket Lake, Comet Lake, and Zen 3 up against Alder Lake? Yeah, it'll be, I would enable XMP, because I think that's just, if you're buying a 16 core Ryzen 5950X, are you going to not be turning on XMP? So I think that's the way to go. So
they should make that process a lot more user friendly. Like, you just kind of have to know to go in and turn on XMP. I wish there was a way that like your computer's like, yo, turn on XMP.
Yeah,
or
but
do you want to turn on XMP?
I think one of those things they can't really do is because you got lawyers. Because the lawyers.
Yeah.
The lawyers will say, well, you blew it up and you were out of spec. So, I know, I'm surprised if you say XMP and warranty voided 3 times in a row, people don't know this. Steve will show up and say they do not care. They don't really care. They don't ever ask. Sometimes they have asked. Most people say, what's XMP? I don't know what that is. Okay, no problem. They move right along because, CPU's dying.
Isn't that Ultimate Football League?
I think so, right? But no, I think it's most of the time they don't really care, but they also can't actively say, do it, because you're a multi-billion-dollar company with a lot of people that are always looking to sue you over the littlest things. And if they're encouraging you to overclock your CPU and it blows up, it's your responsibility. So.
Okay, next one. Ian's asking, part C, have any memory vendors approached you about samples?
I'm trying to think of how I can answer that.
So sneaky. Jeez, Ian.
Yeah, no, I have had people reach out. I think I wasn't like, hey, this is top secret, but clearly there are memory vendors who have hardware they want to get out there.
Okay. Part D, how much should we read into Team Group selling 10 engineering samples as retail kits this early?
I think Team Group is looking at unique ways to garner attention, and selling DDR5 this early to people who can't even run it is a way to get the fact that we're even talking about this now. It did exactly what was worth to sell those 10 modules. So yes, it's worth it for attention. That's the way it is today, is you have to do unusual things to get people to pay attention to you, and it worked, because I can tell you plenty of people wrote about DDR5 for sale to people who can't use it.
Okay. Part E, should we call Alder Lake as dual channel or quad channel DDR5, or are we going to keep referencing the channel bus width every time? Oh yeah, you kind of already talked about that.
Yeah, I feel like you got to go with dual channel. I mean, so if you take a dual channel Alder Lake system and as normal, you don't read the motherboard manual and you put both modules into the same channel, is that a dual channel system or a single channel system?
Oh, you're breaking my brain now.
Yeah, I know. So I think generally the guidance is it's still dual channel, and if we get to enthusiast level stuff where you're getting quad channel, then that's I think it's fine. I think most people don't really see the number of channels, the sub channels, because there's sub channels now in DDR5 versus DDR4. I don't think people would understand that enough to see that as a channel.
Okay, part F, which concludes his list, is if Alder Lake is increasing bandwidth from 51.2 gigabyte per second on DDR4 3200 to 76.8 gigabyte per second on DDR5 4800, should we expect Intel Xe LP32EU to be anywhere relevant for entry-level gaming? Plus 50% memory bandwidth is nothing to be sniffed at, especially if the core gets plus 19% IPC increase too. Lots of numbers.
I suppose it would depend on if those laptops actually get DDR5 and then with this first batch.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that'll be it's such a weird mix of things too, because I do think, there's nothing, if you had a 32, well, if you had whatever the maximum IGP part with DDR5, you get that memory increase, you get it's like, wow, it actually might be usable for, entry level gaming, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially could be the best performance we're going to see out of an IGP. At the same time, you're paying $400 for the memory. You're paying $700 for that CPU. I would recommend that you generally go out and get an IGP. I mean, a discrete card anyway. So it's just that weird disconnect for desktop, even small form factor, unless they, because the thing about Intel is and this is the interesting thing is maybe they can mix it up, but typically the best IGPs are always in the high end. Well, like for Tiger Lake mobile, it's only in the UP3 part. The H doesn't even get it because they know you don't really care. So why waste the die space? And then even if you're looking at for like the UP3 parts, so like that Ultrabook class, you get the XE graphics on the very best i7 part. You get the i3 and you get the it's not even, we're not going to call it XE. It's so cut down. It's now basically UHD graphics. It doesn't even get the fancy XE name. But those people at the low end are probably the ones that kind of need it more than the ones at the high end, because maybe you would have, maybe a Tiger Lake H35 with discrete. So, Intel doesn't often, they start cutting down things. If you're in the cheap seats, like if you fly Southwest, they're not going to make those seats bigger. It's like, we're going to remind you folks. Actually, I guess Southwest isn't fair because every seat is like that on the plane. But if you're on United and you're in the cheap seats, they ain't going to make them seats bigger. It's like, you want the bigger seats? Why don't you pay us more money, right? There's no incentive for them to make the cheap seats better. So I think that's sort of their trap there, unless they decide you know what? We're going to give everybody the same seats you get in, say, business or, or whatever, economy plus. And that's just not, that generally does not run with a good business model to make money. So, no.
In time, it'll probably mean very good things for integrated graphics and APUs. So, but not in the short term.
Yeah, eventually, once it all kind of trickles down, and once DDR5 comes down, and it'll be, and AMD, interestingly, contrast Intel's model. AMD is like, we're just going to use the same damn chip across everything, right? So H to U, it's got the same Radeon amount of performance. So maybe that's a model Intel could adopt going forward, but I don't think it. I don't think. Yeah, I guess maybe. I guess the short answer is no, probably not. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's getting that Camaro with the rims and all the wings and the tint and everything, and then getting the 4-cylinder version of the Camaro. So,
but at least you have a Camaro, right?
No.
Maybe they just want it to sit in their driveway. They just, Yeah.
There's plenty of people who do it. Yeah. It's okay.
All right, so we're going to switch over to the next list from CosMC. He continues Ian's lettering process, so we're going to go with G. How long do we expect to see dual DDR4, DDR5 motherboard support? I don't think they mean motherboards with both on them. I think they just mean... Yeah,
no, I mean, how long does this transition take?
Yeah.
24 to 36 months, at least. at a minimum, depending on the memory that shows up. It usually takes a long, long time for it to trickle down to the lowest end. But, DDR3 to DDR4 feels like it went kind of quickly. But I'm sure if somebody actually went back and looked at it historically, it was probably about the same. So,
No, DDR4 was delayed a bunch, remember? So DDR4 came out a year or two later than it was supposed to. So I was looking into that when I was editing your story, actually. I'm like, yeah, it's not just me. It doesn't just feel faster. It actually is, a couple years faster than historically.
well, this is delayed because I think the last time I looked, so like 3 to 4 was 7 years in between, and like 2 to 3 was 7 years. Like that's the difference. But the weird thing about with 4, which was a little strange, is DDR4 was introduced with Haswell E initially, and then Haswell was still DDR3 because you can't afford it, and clearly if you're buying $1,000 CPU, buying DDR4 was not a problem. So I'm trying to think of when DDR4. So what? It wasn't even Broadwell. Broadwell was still DDR4 was Skylake, 6700K, right? So that was like 2 years. So like it feels like DDR4 on consumer platforms came out 2 years after it was first introduced on HEDT, as they like to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
It launching on Alder Lake is good for adoption. Hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker this time.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, I would say at a minimum 2 to 3 years. You'll still see, and then even after that, you'll still see DDR4 because DDR4 is dirt cheap. So, and there will be plenty of older DDR4 CPUs and boards around in
even if
36
you're not
months.
looking to upgrade your entire system a year from now. If you just need to upgrade that 8 gigabytes of RAM that you have in your existing system, it'll be a good time to upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to get DDR4 real cheap.
Yep.
Yeah, what's interesting is one of the things I don't think I brought up was that they basically for DDR5, I guess the goals were, memory bandwidth has not kept up with core count, and also, density. We need to give you buttloads of RAM, and then so the goal was really to increase bandwidth and also give you a crap load more RAM. So
looks like they got it.
Okay. Next one, part H. How long until we actually recommend building DDR5 systems?
Well, it depends on who you are. If you want to have PCIe 5, DDR5, either the best from AMD or Intel, I would say immediately. If that's, probably as somebody who takes night classes so they don't have to pay for a copy of Windows, those people probably 36 months from now, probably. That's my guess. 2 to 3 years is probably a safe bet. But it depends on who you are.
It'll start at the top and trickle down. Like if you're building an office PC for your kid or whatever, like there's going to be no reason to buy DDR5 anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I think it'll stop, like you're just saying, at the high end, the Core i9s, the Ryzen 9s. And then, maybe next year we recommend that for mainstream gaming PCs kind of a deal, but still not office boxes. So it really does depend on who you are.
Or how cheap you are.
Well, Elena's in the chat and she said, I heard that. Part I, Cause, DDR5 in the trash. How long until we expect DDR6?
7 years, I think we just figured it out.
There was actually, I think DDR to DDR2 was shorter, but generally it's pretty long. It goes for a long time. Changing memories is a massive undertaking. So, and I know for people who haven't lived through many of these, it always feels like it takes a long time, and it does take a long. And I guess that's why I understand the drama that's going to come, because I've seen the drama so many times before. So,
part J is kind of a silly one. Is 16 gigabytes of DDR5 enough for gaming?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be interesting to see if you can get 8 gig DDR5 modules. Like it may be like minimum 16 gig DDR5 modules. I wonder.
I bet you it's like that for the first 6 months. 100%. They're going to make a lot of money off of those too for everyone they sell.
Yep. And part K, last from Cause, will someone finally label their RAM kits with mega transfers per second?
No, they won't. They won't. I mean, the whole crazy thing is like, if you look at how even RAM is marketed, it's just some of it's just like what, and it makes no sense. And then this always sets Ian off. He has a whole video teeing off on Linus about this, but when because people will refer to, well, it's DDR4 3200 megahertz, right? That's the classic, right? That it's mega transfers. But you can understand if you go into a BIOS and probably half the boards, it'll say DDR4 3200 megahertz. You'll see sometimes marketed that way. So sometimes I feel like it's I used to argue with our TV reviewer about 4K. He would get radioactive about like, well, it's not 4K, it's 4K UHD. Whatever. It's not 4K because it's not 4K. It's 3840. Yeah, okay. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it went on for months and months and months, arguing, or finally, yeah, it's 4K.
Well,
he finally gave up.
It's stupid. Like, there are two different 4Ks. I mean, it is stupid to the normal person. They don't care.
I know, but it's like, well, it's not 4K. It's 4K UHD. Whatever. I don't care. It's just so no, I do wish there was a better way that there was a uniform standard. At least it seems like it is really. I mean, a lot of memory is like DDR4, 3200. They don't put megahertz, and there you go.
Yep.
It's better than that whole PC thing. The whole, like, they talk about the effective bandwidth, PC 4800, whatever that was. That was horrible.
Well, that's it for the questions. Oh, no, actually. Yep. That's it for the questions of DDR5. Anything else?
That's an alphabet's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I look forward to it. I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, I am interested as somebody who has lived through so many of these now, just to see how much drama there's going to be, if I'm correct. So just remember this. What I'm saying here is I think there will be drama, and then in 24 months, nobody will even remember the drama. So, but there will be a lot of anger at why I even made DDR5, probably.
Make sure you read those specs while you're shopping for RAM in the foreseeable future, though. You don't want to accidentally wind up with the wrong one.
Yeah, because it's the same slot, right? You could accidentally put.
Well, they're keyed differently.
Oh, they are.
They will be keyed differently. Same number of pins, but it is keyed differently.
It's easy to see DDR5 instead of DDR4 on Newegg, though. So
you know what? I haven't looked at what where the notch is on the DDR5 modules, but do you remember, like, with every single module, they have the notch is different, right? They sort of have the offset, so you can't put a DDR3 in a DDR. But they have the notch that prevents you from doing that so close to the middle that when you're looking at it and you're inserting into a motherboard, it looks like it's dead center, so that you can actually still put the module in both ways and it doesn't fit. But the optical illusion will make it seem like it's like, well, it's still in the middle. Why isn't it fitting? Put that stupid notch all the way over to the side. If you put the notch all the way to one side, people are like, oh, the notch is on the right side. I'm going to put the module in on the right side. But they always put it near the middle. Like, oh, it's moved over a centimeter. Well, I don't have rulers for eyeballs. I can't see it putting in, right? How many times has everybody done that, right? Everybody's done it. You're like, well, it looks like it's centered. Why isn't it? Oh, it's actually backwards.
That was a massive pain during the DDR3 to DDR4 transition, because back then I was building a lot of PCs for articles and stuff like that, and I had a mix of DDR3 and DDR4, and if you're not looking, you just pick one up. They all have the crazy heat sinks. That happened every single time.
Yeah, but even if it's the same one, it's just like it's always just like just enough. They only we moved it over 3 millimeters. You can't. Geez, move it over like 10. So it's like it's intended to let you know, not just That's what I'm angry over.
Okay, all right.
I need to see where that notch is on DDR5. I bet it's right damn in the middle. We put it in the middle this time. Well, you have it backwards. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's shifted one pin. I can't see that. I'm looking right now.
Codger Face says, quote, I don't have rulers for eyeballs. That's a new shirt idea.
Oh, damn. I'm looking at this like it's a non-text story. I think Ryan wrote this one, but that notch is like in the middle again, damn it. Like it's right. It's offset like it's like 4 millimeters over from dead center, right?
Yeah,
Same amount of pins. Well, just put the thing over. I mean, we need to have somebody on from Micron or Jetic to explain why. Joe Macri, somebody call Joe Macri and have him explain to us why it's always in the middle.
Ian says the people on the Jetic committee aren't building machines; they're engineers that still use chalkboards.
Yeah, it's true because it's the same as the motherboard engineers are like, well, I'm going to label these 1, 2, 3, 4 because the CPU's over here, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I should put them in 1 and 3 because 1 and 3 are first. No. You use 2 and 4. Well, why don't you label them 1, 2, 3, 4 from the direction you would install them from? Oh, because the CPU's on the left. You see, and the trace is coming from there. Well, I'm a consumer. I don't have an X-ray machine to see where the traces are coming from in my eyeballs on that motherboard.
Well, because you don't have rulers for eyeballs, you don't have X-ray machines for eyeballs.
It is, yeah. No, actually, you know what it is? They're all sitting there like, wow, what could we do to just piss people off? You know what? I was reading on people complaining about DDR5. Yeah, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put the notch right in the middle. Right in the middle. Well, but then they can't tell. Yeah, that's what.
It'll be hilarious.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you know what else really pissed people off, Corden?
What?
When they tried to play a video game and it bricked their RTX 3090 from EVGA.
That is Adam telling me to move along, and we indeed have the next topic. Did we move?
We did. Click, bloop.
Basically, people playing Amazon's new MMO. What's it? New World? I always want to call it New World. New World started reporting in early July that 3090s were dying, specifically EVGAs. I think some of them were even documented dying during a stream. That immediately caused the internet to freak out. And now, basically, I'm trying to make my brain move over to the next spot. Basically, what we talked to this, you can go to PC World and read this, or you can read it from other people who have pointed back to our story. We talked to EVGA, and EVGA officials basically said, so it was like, well, what's up with this? How many of these cards died? You said you're going to do analysis or anything you can say. And they're like, yeah, actually, it was about, 2 dozen cards, under 30, 2 dozen cards, all 3090s, all early production cards from last year. Most of them died during, obviously according to their interviews with the owners, during the menu screen or while the game was loading. And the cause, according to put in frame rate limiters, you suddenly spiked it up from 150 frames a second to 800 frames a second. And these cards, which were on the borderline, got pushed over the border, causing them to, the solders to go bad and a little bit of smoke leaving them. And what's happened is ever since then, Amazon has added frame rate limiters. EVGA has said they've got no new reports since that frame rate limiter was put in. And they do believe none of the cards that they got were from this year. And they do believe those were just simply early production cards that were just somebody had somebody had a bad day at work, basically. Maybe a little too hungover doing the solder. So that's most likely what happened. Most likely that is the end of it. And they are also working with NVIDIA and Amazon to try to develop, a test where they can sort of screen out for this. So now they will be actually testing for this particular ramping that the game does, even though the game doesn't do that in the actual game that will come out, doesn't do that. So
that would be an excellent twist. Like, hey, we're just going to keep that one broken version of the New World beta, or not broken, and use it to, that's one of our new screening tools. That'd be great. Watch the New World menu screen and those Taiwan factories and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is what freaked everybody out is like software can't break hardware is generally the belief. So,
and it didn't.
And
it didn't.
Well, it did.
That's why I think EVGA deserves props for talking to you. For several reasons. One, it's good just to put, the close to the story. Two, 24 cards, significantly less than 1%. I can see why they wanted to make that known. Like, it wasn't blowing up left and right like people were saying. But really, the crux of it is that hardware was defective. Like, it had a poor workmanship soldering job. So, again, it wasn't the software blowing it up. It was the software pushing it and the protections weren't in place the way they were supposed to, kind of a deal. So... props to them for coming out and being fully honest with
Yeah.
all of this.
No, and and people I know, I have had discussions with people who insist that it's not true and they're lying, and there's like, I don't know, I guess literally thousands of these cards somewhere that nobody's reporting. But yeah, I do think they should be applauded for coming forward, at least saying something publicly. I believe it because I have nothing to disbelieve at this point, and I do believe it's both things though, because games should have frame rate limiters. You don't want to run 1,000 frames a second unless you're making, like basically some kind of test to blow your card up, right? So I think it's up partial because you had cards, these 3090 FTW ones were on the border, and there were also other reports. A lot of people forget there were other reports on Reddit. I saw one from a Gigabyte card. It was a 3080. Jay of Jay's 2 cents said he received numerous reports from his viewers that have said it's across, different GTX, RTX, Radeon even. There were probably just some cards that are just sort of like on the borderline, and some kind of this game particularly just hit everything in the perfect spot, right, to break them. So some cards, not every card is the same, right? That's why there's failure rates. So I do think it's some of it is they should have had a frame rate limiter because you should, but clearly some cards were not great. So
if I owned one of these cards that blew up, one, it would be terribly frustrating because it's impossible to find graphics cards and you already spent $2,000 on one of them and it blows up. So that's frustrating. But you got it replaced. EVGA said they were replacing them even before they got them back. So that's good. Yeah. And in the long run, this might be a good thing because if I did have one of those cards that had the poor workmanship in it, I would much rather discover it this way than discovering it 4 years from now when it's out of warranty or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's how the question is, like, could there be more out there? But I think this is the reason why I think everything is okay and there aren't sort of more things that are going to go bad 4 years from now is generally hardware is not broken by software. So you're just unlikely to see this happen anywhere else. So
it was just like the perfect storm of events.
Yeah.
Well, we have a funny comment. One Big Ben on YouTube says instead of does it run Crisis, does it survive New World?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the best way to know if you have a really solid card is to be like, all right, I'm going to load up New World and test out my card. It's a new benchmark you had,
Yeah, they could release that version specifically with a warning: do not run on your card if you think it may be subpar.
No, you want to run it to know. And then you get a little sticker. It says "I survived New World." So then you've got the cream of the crop, right? Like the high end card.
Yeah, and then I do want to point out EVGA said they actually have the version that did not have the frame rate limiters because they were trying to reproduce it. They actually could not reproduce it on cards, so that's why what leads their belief that this is likely a batch quality issue, which happens rather than simply. There were also the other thing we didn't talk about is. There were a lot of theories that maybe this is the fan controller going crazy. They did come out and say that no, it's not the fan controller because it's actually.
They didn't just say that. They said in no way, shape, or form was it the fan controller.
Yeah, they said no. What happened is third-party utilities were seeing noise from the I2C bus. God, it has really been a long morning. I2C bus. They were seeing that noise, and they were seeing that as. No signal from the fan controller, meaning the fan controller is not working, has lost control of everything. In fact, if you ran the EVGA Precision X1 utility, they were screening for that noise on the I2C bus. So actually it was functioning. They have since released a firmware update for the I2C bus that should help. Two, with the updated firmware on the I2C on the fan controller and with updated versions of HW Info and GPU-Z or any other popular utility that was seeing it is blanking out, it should function fine. So it was one of those things where
that's complicated.
It is very complicated, but it is one of those things where there was a problem. There was the usual hand wringing and freak out stage, and then there was the search for answers. And again, you always have to be careful because sometimes causation is not correlation sometimes, or correlation is not causation. It looked like it was that, it was not. In fact, I believe that as well, because like, well, that makes sense. The fan controller freaking out from this game for some reason, but clearly VGA says that's not true. In fact, they've corrected it to show that that's not true at all. So, but I think the lesson is people should not freak out, but it's something with our community where we're just simply conditioned to want to freak out at everything. I certainly do my freak outs. So,
and hand wringing.
And hand
You
wringing.
love your hand wringing.
I do hand wringing. Look at this. They're going to try to kill PC again. See, I always say that because I know it's always going to be that way.
All right, and I linked to the article. Is there anything else we should cover on this, or should we get some Q&A before we get out of here?
No, I think I'm good. I think, the lesson is sometimes just everybody take a chill pill. And then honestly, I have had discussions, I guess we can call that politely, with people who are absolutely sure every single card has this flaw and they will simply die. And I don't know how they can say that without any definitive proof of that. So, people need to sometimes maybe notch it back a few notches, right? Just turn it down a little.
Okay. Let's move over to Q&A. If you have a question right now, please send it in the chat. Or if you're watching later, there's a link to Discord in the description. We have a full nerd question section there that you can put your questions in. I will look through those and read them on the show. The first one is one I meant to bring up at the end of the DDR5 discussion, but we got a $5 super chat from VC Jester. Thank you. Said, asking, is PC moving up to DDR5 just to keep up with the new consoles?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think, well, you can answer, Brad, if you want. My opinion
Oh, no,
is
I
I think he wants you to.
For me, it was a name joke.
Oh, I see.
PlayStation 5, DDR5.
No, you do have to move because, memory bandwidth and capacity is, it's always, you always want to move the infrastructure forward. You don't want to wait till you're out of memory bandwidth. So it makes sense. It's been 8+ years now since DDR4 was introduced. So it's time. Density goes up. All kinds of things improve. So I think it makes sense. And then sometimes this would be a fascinating discussion with somebody who knows way more than me, but I do sometimes wonder if it's because we are linked to, PC is built on commodity server hardware a lot of times. So, servers need bandwidth. They need capacity. They get it. So we sort of get it too, in a way. And, you have to move everybody. You have to raise all the boats at the same time. So it will take at least a couple years for the actual advantages for it to shake out, though. And no, it's not about consoles. Give me a break.
Well, I mean, console has the bigger number, so.
What I get is what is that people saying, like, you could easily buy a console now, so just go buy a console because you can't buy a video card. And I went to look and you couldn't find any consoles.
No, nobody's saying it's easy to buy. They're saying it's easier to buy.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, K2's way easier than Everest.
There's levels of easiness.
Yeah.
So let's get on to another question. We got a $35 super chat from Mike Quinton. Thank you so much. He gave us earlier, said, why are so many CPU-based clocks set at 3.5 gigahertz and not 4.0 gigahertz? Is there an actual CPU speed limit?
Oh, you mean the base clock that they spec out for all the CPUs?
Yes.
I've never actually looked at where there's any common base clock among all of them, but I imagine it's based on the process, manufacturing, the chips themselves, design. It's just the base clock is not what you always hit. Oftentimes you're running turbo in all modern PC CPUs is so opportunistic. It's almost always running at very high clocks. So base clock is generally like, you're running all cores, all threads very hard for a long, long time, or it's a super hot day and you're running a stock cooler kind of stuff. So it's worst case scenario in general. But I don't know why they always settle on 3.5. Maybe it's a good number. I
I hadn't even noticed that they did.
Yeah, I'm because it does vary, but maybe that is just simply, it's interesting. I don't see it often used with PCs, but it's used with cars, like limp mode. Like you have a problem with your car, so it goes in limp mode or something. So basically underpower. That's sort of like, maybe that's just like, oh, we'll just run down there. So it's, I don't know. Good question though.
Ian chimes in and says base clock is a guarantee.
Yeah.
That's you're going to be able to hit that, I guess.
Yeah, but why 3.5? Why? That's the question, Ian. Is like, is there a technical reason for that, or is that just like it's my favorite number? Who has a 35
It's an easy
in their
number
jersey?
to guarantee, probably.
Who has a 35 in their jersey? Is there? Maybe there's like some favorite.
No clue.
Off the top of my head.
No.
All right. Next question is from Pedro Akura. Let me see if I can parse this. Comparing a 3.4 gigahertz on all cores and 4.1 gigahertz on one core to an Intel that runs 4.0 gigahertz on all cores, is that directly comparable, or is different IPC, or is it a different IPC even though they're not running at the same speeds? Sorry, I'm trying to parse it a little bit. I think they're just asking how you can do 3.4 on all cores, but you'll get one core up to 4.1, whereas Intel, it says they're running 4.0 on all cores. Is that comparable?
You mean from Intel to Intel?
I'm not quite sure.
Same.
I'm not quite sure.
I would say probably the same chips from the same generation, right? Like, you can't necessarily match Ryzen 3 versus their Intel counterparts clock for clock, because they are different IPCs, they are different architectures, they are different all that stuff. But you could compare the current Core i3 versus the current Core i9 because they all have the same underlying base.
Yeah. I think it's, if you're trying to do, manufacturer to manufacturer, it gets pretty sticky. And especially because what exactly are you doing on those? What exactly is the workload you're running on those two? So way too many variables. But generally, I would say if the higher clocks, all core is generally going to be better, right? Because Ryzen runs pretty well at high clocks too. So I'm not sure it necessarily makes sense to me.
Also, I mean, I know back before I was building PCs and just kind of looking at specs, right? It was just like, oh, the higher the clock speed, the better, But but a higher clock speed on an older generation does not necessarily mean, or a higher turbo does not necessarily mean better than a newer generation at a lower turbo, right? Or with more cores or something. I didn't understand that, at least.
Yeah, no, and that was always the knock against megahertz, because it was heavily marketed by CPU companies initially, and then it sort of got silly with that, and it wasn't that useful as a metric. And then I think probably the problem is people got we went from you need more megahertz because megahertz is always better, and then it turned into megahertz doesn't mean anything because of NetBurst P4. These are, your 2 gigahertz on a P4 was not as good as a 1.45 gigahertz on a P3 kind of thing, or an original Athlon. But I think then we went to megahertz is meaningless, which is also incorrect because, again, as Brad just pointed out, 5 gigahertz on Intel is better than a Intel running at the same family as 4 gigahertz. So it does matter as long as it's the same family and same manufacturer.
Well, and Ian says
I always have that trouble when people talk to me about graphics cards, comparing the shader cores, like the CUDA cores versus the shader cores, kind of a deal. Like, no, you can't. Like, they both use numbers in those, but they are not the same thing. You can't just. Yes, they're both graphics cores, but it's not. It's very different.
Yeah.
All right. A couple more questions. David MSG 6800 XT over on Discord is asking, how many cores do you need on a CPU if you're gaming at 1080p with a 6600 XT or an RTX 3060? What would you recommend?
It's 1080p 60 hertz?
They just say 1080p.
I guess it probably wouldn't matter with a 3060, would it? So it's not like you're going to be pushing 9,000 frames a second.
If I was looking to not be extravagant these days, I would go with the 6-core. Like, you could do. I'm sure you could probably get by. I haven't done extensive testing with a quad core that's threaded, hyper-threaded, or simultaneous multi-threaded these days. but I'd feel a lot more comfortable with the 6-core part. They're a lot more affordable these days.
Yeah, 6-core is sort of the minimum these days. It'd be hard to get a quad core at this point. Is I think that unless you're running something.
Well, no, there's
really
some good budget ones. There's some good budget ones, and I wouldn't be, a 3060 and a good budget quad core will last you good for a few years, I think.
Yeah.
But if you can, I'd go up to a 6-core.
Yeah, and I guess if you're talking about there are some budgety 4 cores, but the question is then would I take, because he's already got the system or she already has the system, but I'm just like, if this is
6800 XT, by the way, congrats on your purchase.
the 68.
Sorry, that was the person's name. That was the person's name, 6800 XT. So congrats on your purchase.
But I'm just wondering, like, so, because I think the real question there should be, if I'm building a new system, I'm speccing out a new system, should I save $60, $70 to go from maybe even 100 potentially to go from a 6-core 12-thread system to a 4-core 8-thread system to get a bigger GPU? If I take that money now and I take the extra $100 or $80 and I put that toward that bigger GPU, what would you do, Brad?
That's an interesting question. I think it doesn't matter because I can't buy a graphics card anyway. But I would. Oof.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I'm not sure. I might have to think about that and do an article about that, actually.
Really? Because, I know people, because really most of it applies to building and speccing a new machine out. That whole quad core versus 6-core sometimes feels silly because, there's no reason not to get a 6-core, so they're so cheap now. But
you
then
get a quad core for $113.
What's a? Let's see.
You can get the 10. What is it? The last gen one, especially, was at good prices. 10K 400F, 10400 or 11400, I think it is now.
Yeah, what is it going for?
I don't know, like 120-ish bucks. Might be up to 150. I don't know. I haven't looked at CPU prices recently.
i5 11400 is maybe $200. Oh no, never heard of those folks. Maybe 260. Maybe 260.
Really?
Wow. What the?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I'd go with.
I think you're
6-core.
referring to the 10400F 140.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. Something along those lines. The 11400 have replaced that, but that's still a very good part, and that's a very good price. So.
Also, Boz on YouTube says Linus released a video today showing a Skylake quad core is still more than enough at 1080p with today's games.
Yeah, and I think that does not change that. And I'm glad he did that because everybody needs to continue to do that every once in a while. The narrative really turned into I need 8 cores, I need 6 cores to play games because consoles got 8 cores, I need 8 cores. That just has not turned out to be the truth yet. I wish it would, but it has not. So generally, you have a quad core KB Lake part, you're actually not, you're not doing too bad. Like if you had a 7700K, does it make sense to throw that out to build a 6-core system because you're going to really need, almost everything new? Or would you rather just toss out that 970 and build get a better video card? I would say generally better video card gets you more bang for the buck for the most part. But of course, the other thing though is the interesting thing is, we're old timers. For us, an idea of playing a game is to play a game. It's not about like, I'm going to stream it, webcam, Ring camera, and then have my makeup on so that I can play my game. That's a different kind of thing. Like
OBS and watching chat.
You could argue sort of like that social gaming that everybody does now. They want to do, 6 cores is a recommended, core count at least. So at a minimum.
I will say too, though,
That's a good point.
The way I think of it, I tend to think, or at least back in the day, I tended to think I'm not going to upgrade the CPU that often, as much as I'd probably get 2 GPUs out of a CPU, if that makes sense, right? So it's like plan to have the CPU for 2 GPU cycles. So maybe you want to spend a little bit more. I don't know, just because it's going to last a little longer.
Yeah, I wonder if people are upgrading CPUs at a faster rate because you know what, I can't get no GPU. I might as well just upgrade the CPU. Or since gaming does drive a lot of it. If they're just like, I'm beaten. I'm just going to take a break. So
I have a feeling that a lot of that's going on. Especially where right now it's a weird time for all this to be happening because both AMD and Ryzen platforms are at a dead end until the new stuff comes out, basically. So it's a weird time.
yeah, and I saw a story on PC Gamer this morning saying that it looks like Ryzen 5000 prices are starting to head downward as new parts may be coming out.
And as Elder Lake starts looking like it's going to happen soon.
Yeah.
They both do that. So does AMD, so does NVIDIA, so everybody, they all do that.
Okay, let's do one last question before we get out of here. Actually, two last questions. I had an interesting one. Somebody emailed me. I'm not going to say their name because I didn't get permission, but somebody emailed me asking about their our everyday carries. Gordon, what's your everyday carry that you have on you, if you want to reveal it, or what's a good knife that you would recommend, or a Leatherman or something for everyday use?
I actually, ever since the pandemic, I've kind of lightened up because most of the time it's in the car, but every day would be, so I would consider belt and pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not backpack, because that to me feels different to me. Leatherman with the bits, bit extender. Actually, recently I got the ratcheting bit extender for that, which is kind of cool, but definitely kind of underbuilt, so I'm wondering if it's going to last that long. Flashlight, Phoenix is a great brand. I love Phoenix, by the way. Fisher Space Pen. Whistle. I carry a whistle in case, mostly because if you're trapped under concrete rubble, it's easier to blow a whistle than it is to shout, "Hey, I'm trapped under the rubble here." So that's what the whistle for.
Mm-hmm.
A spare flashlight, believe it or not. 2 Simpix. Benchmade. Right now I like the Axis Assist. They're really great knives. And Benchmade makes great knives, but they're super expensive. What else? I usually carry also a small Sharpie, a miniature Bic lighter. I used to carry a small pry bar with me. I've stopped carrying that. So a little tiny one. That was on the Leatherman.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So, I have a great story because so I'm married. So my story is like, well, you're married. So it doesn't really matter now. It doesn't, I got my phone. I carry my phone in a holster, right? Because like, who am I fooling, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a long story I've told. It's true. Who am I fooling? I'm going to carry my phone on a holster. I used to have my Leatherman. I used to carry my Leatherman on my belt because, you're always working on PCs. You always need, Leathermans are just wonderful tools. Oh, the Wave is awesome. And then one day I was leaving work and, well, actually before then I was like, man, what am I carrying this stupid thing for? It's just extra weight. I'm just carrying around on me. So I go to the car and I start the car and the starter gets stuck. So sometimes the starter solenoid just gets jammed and so it just keeps going, right? So it's like if you were sitting in there with the car cranking on to the ignition, mode.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing. You could I could turn it off, turn it back on. It was just going and going. It was going on for about 50 seconds. So eventually what happens is it destroys something. It gets really expensive, right? Sometimes it'll eat into the. So it's like, oh, I've got my Leatherman on my belt. So I pull it out and I disconnect the battery. So I disconnect the battery because I could actually get to the terminal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to disconnect it, have it towed to a local shop. They swap the starter. I was at work, so I was 20 miles from work. So only because I had my Leatherman on me. So that's why I think it's worth it. And last week, I go to come here. I start my car. Actually, it doesn't start because the battery is dead. So I use one of those lithium-ion battery jumpers that's in the trunk. I jump the car. Sorry, this story's going on, but it's almost over. I jumped the car. I said, maybe it's a battery, but normally if I drive this car, it should put a charge on the battery, but I didn't fill the tank up. My wife's always on me. It's like, you should always keep a half a tank of gas in case something bad goes Like I'm always like I can always push it right so I can get down to 1 mile of gas. So I'm like,
No.
so it's like battery basically dead. Jumper thing I've already used the charge to start it once. Those things are kind of like you can't really start it more than once. It's like I have to get here to do a video. If we're doing an interview, or actually we're going to Lenovo, so I had to get to work. So damn, I have to drive to San Francisco, hope the car does not die on the bridge, and I only had like a gallon of gas left. So then I'm like, what am I going to do? And like, if I turn off the car in the gas, and I was like driving along San Francisco, if you don't know, there's no gas stations in San Francisco. There's more fast food places in San Francisco than there are gas stations in San Francisco, which says something. So I'm like, and I was like driving to work, oh, there's actually a Chevron. It's like, how am I going to get gas so I can at least drive further and start the car again? Because if I shut it off, it's going to die. It's like, you know what? I'll just have to hot tank it. So I'm like one of those people that pull up to the gas station, doesn't turn the car off, take the gas cap off, put 5 gallons of gas in because it was like $5 to San Francisco. Then I drive to work. Fast forward later on in the day, I'm like, I need to fix this now. I go to one Costco. I charge the battery pack up so I can start it up to go to Costco. Like, oh, we don't have that battery. We have the one with the reverse terminals. Oh, are you really? We got it in the other store. It's like, I got to say, luckily at work, I was here all day. I charged the battery pack up so I could start it again. So then I go to that store and I turn the car off, and I'm not going to be able to turn it on again until I swap the battery out, which I can do because I have my Leatherman. So yet again, I pull off the Leatherman, change the battery.
There you go. All right.
That's my EDC story.
I don't know about you, Brad, but I carry around a Leatherman Wave and then a Spyderco Delica. Those are my two easy ones. Oh, actually, no, I have that little tool. What is this? I picked this up recently for my keychain, a Gerber shard. I actually find some use of that too. Yeah. Brad, do you carry anything?
What is it? Walther PP in the sock? No, I'm just kidding. No, No, I have my iPhone. I have a lighter. I have headphones.
Okay.
I try not to drive too much so I don't have to worry about broken cars, and I try not to get into knife fights so much. So hopefully I don't need to use it for that either.
Yeah, but you have long blades for that. So.
Oh yeah, I have a bunch of swords, cutlasses, and stuff like that. Fended off some invaders with those before.
A true story.
I had a coworker who was very disappointed because the knives I carry are always for her was like, well, that's scary. What do you do with that? Well, I got to cut my avocado at work for my salad. It's like, oh, that's
for your
that's the worst thing ever. Like,
all right, last question. Dr. Ian Cuttrist asked later, said, PC World is hiring, but how much are you paying? A good number of publishers like IDG seem to be hiring lately. Brad, are we hiring?
We are hiring. We are hiring 2 new positions, actually, a staff writer and an associate editor. So
nice.
You're watching the show. If you got some writing skills, some editing skills, check out our site. We had a post up today. You can find the links to the appropriate HR stuff there. I'm not sure of the exact salary. I think it might depend on where you are in the U.S. because it's very much open to most states for remote positions. So it might factor in there. I don't know the details. So sorry, can't give you a firm number.
All right. Fun times, yeah.
Come join us. You could be part of the Full Nerd. Are you listening? It could be you on it next week. Or not next week. Next year.
Yeah, next week. A little early. But you could report to Brad. It's fun. It's fun times.
Terrible.
Terrible times. Terrible times for all. Gordon, let's get this out of here.
So check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play. Oh boy, never drink a lot of English tea right before you have to say a lot of words. My tongue is just like sticky to my mouth. Google Play, Spotify, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@pcworld.com. Also, please leave a comment every time you do. Gordon has an extended run-on story about his Leatherman. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis.
He has those stories, even if you don't.
And Adam Patrick Murray is going to hit the off switch with his Leatherman wave.
I remember within the first couple months of meeting Gordon, he did a thing where he just somebody asked him to lay out all the stuff that was currently in his pockets out on a table, and wow, it was a lot of stuff. I have the photo somewhere. I should share it in Discord. It was eye opening, and that's when I learned about Gordon. So anyway,
Like a chipmunk.
Yeah.
Like with the walnuts, except it's just junk in your pocket.
exactly. Thanks everybody. See you later. Bye.